Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested. I'm here at the annual RPF Showcase and Party. It's a gathering of many members of the Replica Prop Forum. And of course, it would be at this party where we find a K-2SO fan build. Darren, you're one of the few people making full-size K-2SOs.
Exactly, he is very tall, he is 7'2". Determining his height was part of a problem because we didn't really know a lot about him. It's only really been over a year that we saw the first images of this character. So originally he started, I wanted to do an ID88 build because I really liked that, but we have very few pictures and it's really hard to get like the head and the proper gear. So then as soon as I saw K-2SO, I'm like, this is what I want to build. I love building, making the millions of problems you end up with that you have to solve. So originally this was going to be a puppet, and because I wanted to be able to encase myself in size, but there were some issues with that. I would have to scale it up a good amount. He'd probably be like 9 feet tall, but that would be really tall. And then I actually bought there's one set of stilts in the world that looks like a foot, and I found those. They're called Skywalker stilts, amazingly. And I bought those, but I couldn't figure out how to hide myself well. I couldn't hide my foot. And at the end, I'm just like, okay, I need to go to puppet. And I've seen other people do this kind of design where they're standing behind it.
Yes.
There's a Grievous that I've seen.
That's the thing. When you think about Star Wars droids, right? That's a costume, C-3PO or IG-88, or a mechanized droid, RC. Right. But Grievous is probably the closest in terms of Star Wars droids, how you would perform with it.
And with the Grievous puppet, you have the cloak, so that helps you disappear. Now, he doesn't have an awesome Captain Phasma cape, but what I'm going to do when he's finished is I have an Imperial officer uniform, and so I'll wear that so it kind of forests through the trees. It's just an officer standing behind him rather than a guy in a black suit trying to disappear. So I can't hide, so you just try to blend in.
All right, puppet versus costume. The idea is still to be able to walk in a public place, a convention, and animate the character.
Yes.
K-2SO's robot form it's designed to be almost impossible to be a real
He never existed.
Form, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have Alan walking around in the motion capture suit.
So how much motion and how much animation did you want to get into the puppet?
So, you definitely start off a project with what do you want him to do? And so I wanted the hands to articulate. So a lot of the mechanics for the hands are linkages, so I can actually, bend his fingers. He's not going to pick up very much, but I wanted to do that. The head can tilt. It has a pan tilt servo in it. He can walk, so my feet clip into his feet, and I have a harness so his weight is held on my chest. Yeah. And then I have puppeting paddles in the back that my hands go into to manipulate and do that. Weight is always a factor when you're hanging something off your body, and that was definitely so. I went with PVC for the skeletal structure, and then foam for the outer skin. Again, it is starting to gain weight with every piece I add, but it is keeping him fairly light.
Now, there's no instruction manual for making a costume and a puppet suit like this. Does it begin with a lot of sketching, a lot of diagramming? Where does the brainstorming come into play?
So I think everyone has a good notebook that they always keep, and I've always been sketching from, how do I fit inside him to how many LEDs do I put in the eyes? What is the skeleton going to look like? How are the joints going to fit together? How is the harness going to fit together? How are the feet going to fit together? So a big breakthrough was this guy, the Big Fig, 31 inches tall. I figured out if you multiply 1 inch by 2.74, gives you right around, he's 31 inches, 7'2". That helped me pull a lot of dimensions and get a basic feel. My biggest fear would be I'd make a piece and it would feel 10% too small or 10% too big. But this has really helped a lot. It's not super articulated, but it gets the job done.
And lets you design pieces piecemeal.
Exactly.
Just the shoulder piece, just the forearm, just the hands, just the head. A lot of people are making 3D printed versions, static versions. Do you tap into any of those resources as well?
So I have seen someone who's 3D printed an entire K2. His head is 3D printed. This is my first foray into foam, so that was a little beyond me. And it's all these details and the gribbly bits in the face. So this is 3D printed, but everything else is foam. And so this, I found the file on Thingiverse and had a friend of mine who had a 3D printer, just said, hey, can you print this for me? Figured out the right scale. And then this was, again, a lot of it, it's hard in a project where you're spending so much time on the mechanics and you feel like you're not progressing, but you are, because every day you're figuring out another problem, but it hasn't really looked like this except for the last 2 weeks. That's when it's really come together.
And by the time you get to aesthetics, you're 70% done
Yeah.
in the project timeline.
Right.
Things are locked in place actually with these PVC pipes. Now the performance of it,
Right.
it can wave, it can grab loosely,
Right.
your head can turn. How are you going to be able to see what K2SO sees?
So in moving him, the key for this was really the spider joint. This I found on a website. It's for like a mannequin you would set up for like a Halloween, like in the lawn. So I added a neoprene washer so it was movable, and that lets you basically make a PVC joint. I've seen people make PVC joints with, like cutting or putting a bolt in, and this was a great clean way that I can actually also use to let it pivot as a joint. But for seeing exactly, he's strapped into me, and because he's bolted to me, when I move left, he moves left, so I can't look around him. So there's a tiny camera in his head, so he's a little tiny spy cam, and again, you start with an issue. I needed a wireless camera, I needed to be battery powered, it needed to last for at least a good amount of hours on a con floor. So it's a little wireless, got on Amazon, and it creates its own Wi-Fi network, and there's an iPad in his back. And that transmits, and that's my view, and that's how I can see enough to see where I'm walking, or if I'm reaching down to like shake someone's hand, I can see in that regard. So that's how I can see. He's got to be able to come apart, I got to be able to take him places. So that was another design challenge. But yeah, started with the PVC. The spider joint again is super key. The slip ring for the shoulders and the wrists. But I really liked doing this design with the mirrors in all the joints. So in K2SO, his joints are hollow. They go all the way through. I'm sure you could make that, but it would be a huge design challenge. So all of his joints have a circular mirror in them. So at the right angle, it feels like a tube.
Yeah.
I mean, it breaks down on certain angles, but it's enough to convince that it could be hollow.
It's a special effect.
It's a special effect built right into the puppet. So started with the feet, worked my way up, started with the hands, a lot of time designing the linkages in here. I'll take his arm off for you. So this piece right here, this is to simulate the tubing and such, and then this pops off, hides the spider joint here, and then this just comes right off. So his whole arm, this is, I call it the puppet paddle, and it's very long. So this is where my hand goes, and these are all the linkages. I kind of feel like Luke Skywalker in that scene when he gets his
fingers,
robotic
yes.
hand. These are RC car struts, and so they basically become tiny turnbuckles. So after I get all the wires done, I can tighten or loosen, and basically the line runs through drainage tubing to here, and then it runs all the way down to the ends. This is just a PVC nested, so a PVC, little big, with the line running under, and then you just pull, and he can, maybe not play piano, but he can do enough. And I'm really excited to take him to cons. I'm really excited to interact with kids, interact with adults, and just, the kids are going to see me behind him, but they're not going to see me. They're going to see him. He's going to talk. He's got to have to talk. So I'm going to put an anchor inside him with a 45-degree angle on a plastic tube. And I'm hoping that'll give some resonance to kind of sound a little bit robotic. And that way I can talk. I have a stormtrooper armor, and talking is really important because it lets you interact with the crowd in a much more compelling way. I want to get a Cassian friend to come alongside, maybe give him a smack every once in a while. But so far, I've been able to satisfy all the requirements for what I wanted him to do. He's about 75% done. I still, need to flesh out the lower torso, but a lot of the time, like I said, was spent on the mechanics. How do you do the puppeting? How do you make him work? How do you balance weight versus, materials? But EVA foam is worked great for him. You can form it into anything, put a bit of barge on it and it butts right up and instantly glues. But the head, so it goes on this pan tilt head, and it's held in by rare earth magnets, and that's just got all the internal electronics. Really had to go light with this. But it's painted, the top coat is a barbecue paint, which gives it a really matte look, because he's a metal droid, but he's not a shiny droid like C-3PO. So he looks like he's ready to be reprogrammed and take on the Empire.
So many different materials, different processes, from 3D printing to foam fabrication to just classic special effects using smoke and mirrors, literally.
Yeah, literal mirrors.
Thank you for sharing with us your K2SO, Darren. People can follow along your build thread on the RPF. We'll have the link below. But I think let's see a demonstration, have you strap this on and see how you can get moving.
I've done a test about a week ago, but I think he's ready for a couple more steps.
Awesome, let's check it out.